What's up everyone, I'm Gooshy, and in this video we're going to be going over my Trickster CT15 solo build. All this gameplay is post-patch with all the nerfs to the Trickster and to things like vulnerability and twisted rounds. So in this video we'll be going over the abilities that I'm using, the gear with all the mods I have equipped, the skill tree, and most importantly, the playstyle. There's a couple of things that I learned along the way to CT15 that honestly I wasn't fully utilizing, and once I did, I noticed a huge boost to my damage numbers, making CT that much easier. So if you're interested, stay tuned. Alright, so there's several changes that I had to make from my previous video where I posted my solo CT15. However, since the patch notes came in, which brought nerfs to certain abilities, we definitely had to bring our damage numbers up a little bit. Specifically to the Trickster, a couple of tree nodes, Disruptive Firepower, Scion Power, and Outrider Executioner, had their power reduced from 50 to 35. We'll talk more in depth about these tree nodes later on in the video, but just note that since we're using 2 of these nodes, that equates to a loss of 30% damage. Next, the vulnerable status had its power reduced from 25 to 15. Since we also take advantage of vulnerability, our total damage loss is 40%. So as long as we can compensate for this damage loss, our build should still be up to par. So the first thing that I've changed is the shotgun I'm using. I finally switched to using the Bulwark, which is currently being sold by Tiago. So as long as you have the drop pod tokens to purchase it, this is a really easy weapon to pick up. And the main reason why I switched to this is so I could stick on the tier 3 mod Killing Spree. This mod is found on the legendary weapon Amber Vault, and luckily I got this pretty early on in the game. But this mod states that killing shots increase damage by 25% for 20 seconds and could stack 3 times. So that's an increase of 75%, easily compensating for the 40% loss. Another good option to use is the Fatal Symbiont. Its tier 3 mod perk is Dark Sacrifice, which will also give you a 75% weapon damage bonus, but will drain up to 50% of your max health. And then the mod that it automatically comes with is Ultimate Bleeding Bullets. Shots inflict bleed on enemies. This perk is absolutely needed so that we can get infinite ammo. If you didn't know already, there are several ways to get infinite ammo. The first is through a weapon mod that I was using before called Perpetuum Mobile. This replenishes your magazine if you kill enemy with 35% or less ammo remaining in your magazine. The next is the armor mod called Vampiric Mag. Killing shots on enemies afflicted with bleed replenishes 50% of your ammo in your magazine. And there's trade-offs to both. Perpetuum Mobile gives you very little room for error, as if you don't get that kill with 35% ammo in your mag, then the perk does not proc. However, the benefit is that you only need this one mod to get that infinite ammo. In this case, you need 2 mods, Vampiric Mag and Bleeding Bullets, to get the same effect, but it is a little bit more reliable, as most of the time you have at least 50% of your mag to get a kill and replenish your ammo. Your secondary and third weapons don't really matter, as you'll mostly be using your main weapon with infinite bullets. Next, we'll go over to the gear I'm using. As mentioned in my other video, the most important thing you want on your gear is bonus firepower. The more damage you do, the faster the enemies die, and the faster you get your health back. So since this is a gun focused build, we want as much firepower as possible. My rolls aren't perfect, and I think the passives that I prefer are bonus damage, close range damage, and cooldown reduction, but this is just what I have so far. The second most important thing are the mods that you have equipped. For each piece of gear, I have 1 offensive mod and 1 defensive mod. For some people, this might be a little bit overboard on the defensive side, but this is what worked for my playstyle and really does keep you alive in the moments that it really matters. And you'll notice this trend that a lot of these defensive mods proc when my health drops below 30%. So on my helmet, I have Emergency Stance. Attain a Golem for 4 seconds whenever your health drops below 30. Golem is super helpful as it'll reduce damage by 65% while it's active. For the offensive mod on this helmet, I have Bloodlust. Killing shots increase firepower by 17,000, which can stack up to 3 times. Next, for my chest piece, I have Radiation Jump. Hunter Prey inflicts vulnerable to the enemy you teleport behind, which again with the nerf will make vulnerable enemies take 15% extra damage. You usually want to use this to target elites to burst them down as fast as possible. For the defensive mod, I have Plate Dodge. Rolling increases your armor by almost 34,000 for 5 seconds. And this is a random mod that rolled on this piece, which is fairly decent and kind of works for my playstyle because I tend to roll a lot. Next on my pants, I have mitigation from death. Killing enemies while aiming down sights grants you 45,000 points of armor for 10 seconds and stacks up to 3 times. So out of all the defensive mods that I have, this is probably the most important. If you look at my current armor, it's 49,000. So essentially, if I'm killing enemies while aiming down sights and have max stacks, I can almost quadruple the amount of armor that I have. Of course, the downside is that you have to be aiming down sights, but I think that's a small price to pay to gain that major boost in defense. For the offensive mod, I have buckshot shelled, which increases shotgun weapon damage by 10%. For my gloves, I have Ice Trap. Whenever your health drops below 30%, freeze is inflicted on enemies within a 10-meter radius. And I'd say this is probably the second most important defensive mod to have. The 10-meter radius is humongous, and as long as you're not out in the open, this really helps you get that kill when you're at low health to heal up again. For the offensive perk, I have Personal Space, which grants a 15% bonus to close range damage. Finally, for my boots, I have Vampiric Mag to get that infinite ammo when enemies are affected by bleed, and Perseverance Munitions. Whenever your health drops below 30%, your firepower increases by 38,000 for 5 seconds. Along with Ice Trap, this makes getting that kill to get your health back that much easier. This build took me a couple days to find gear with firepower and decent mods. If you aren't level 50 yet, I highly recommend getting up to CT15 first so that all loot drops at level 50 and you don't have to worry about leveling up lower level gear and wasting titanium. If you want a full explanation on why this is important, check out my challenge tier expedition video on the most efficient way to grind up to CT15. I'll link that video here and in the description below. But the process to get decently rolled gear is fairly easy. The first is to just check the vendors. Bailey and Tiago both sell gear up to your level, with their inventory refreshing every 30 minutes to an hour. So always make sure you have enough scrap and drop pod tokens to immediately pick up gear when it comes up. Next is to save your rare items. If your rare items have a decent firepower, and most importantly a mod that you're looking for, you can always upgrade the rarity and then mod the other slot to whatever you want. Next, we'll go over these skills that I'm using. And so the skill that you absolutely need for this build is Twisted Rounds. This fills your mag with anomaly infused bullets that increase your power by 15,000. And so because we're getting infinite ammo, this buff to damage should be permanent, as long as we're keeping our ammo fill. The recent nerf did increase the cooldown to 25 seconds, so using Vampiric Mag, which is a more reliable method to getting more ammo back, is a nice choice. Next, we're using Venator's Knife, which will deal a little bit of damage and slow enemies for 10 seconds, and Hunt the Prey, which will have you teleport behind the enemy and give you some shields. And so the main reason why we're using both of these are mainly because of their low cooldown. If we go to our skill tree and go over the most important nodes that proc or increase damage, is that really should drive the way we play. As a rule of thumb, the top tree is always focused on weapon damage, so this is the tree that we'll be choosing. The main skills that we want to look at are Disruptive Firepower, which will increase your weapon damage by 35% after activating a deception skill, and Outrider Execution, which will also increase your weapon damage by 35% after activating a movement skill. These stack on each other, so if we use Venator's Knife and Hunt the Prey, we should be getting a 70% increase to weapon damage. And so preferably, I like to keep one of these skills up at all times, so the low cooldown on both Venator's Knife and Hunt the Prey are super important. Next, we'll talk about a node that I honestly overlooked for a while, and this is Unforeseen End. When attacking enemies from behind, all your weapon damage is increased by 20%. There are 2 of these nodes, so automatically, if you're attacking enemies from behind, you get a 40% increase to weapon damage. So basically with these 4 nodes, under the condition that you used a deception skill, of movement skill, and are attacking enemies from behind, will give you a total of 110 damage increase. And so this is super important for the playstyle, as this is the main strat to be bursting down elites. The rest of the nodes are honestly up to you, but I just prioritize damage and armor piercing. Next, we'll go over the general playstyle. I said before, I always like to keep one of these damage buffs up at all times. Venator's Knife is really useful to slow enemies at a distance, making it safer for you to run in and get close enough for close range damage. When dealing with trash mobs, Hunt the Prey is really useful as an offensive and defensive tool. I always like to pick off enemies from the outside first and circle around so I always know that enemies are attacking from one direction. Next, whenever you're trying to attack an elite, I always try to wait for both my cooldowns, attack from behind, and aim for crits. It's really important to get these elites out of the way as fast as possible, as a lot of their moves are very annoying and increases your time while doing expeditions. If both your skills aren't on cooldown, Hunt the Prey is really nice to get behind the enemy so you can get that secondary buff, or if you just have Venator's Knife, the slow is very useful as it gives you enough time to get behind them and shoot their head from behind. Again, it's always important if you're facing higher health enemies to attack them from behind, as it's a very noticeable difference. Finally, my last tip, again facing against elites, is to always look at your ammo count, especially while fighting bosses. Most of the time you won't be bursting them down in one clip. So always make sure that you have enough ammo to kill one of the lower health enemies to refill that mag and then go back to getting hits in. Preferably you want to only be using 8 seconds while you do damage to the boss to take advantage of all those buffs, then take care of trash mobs while your cooldowns are coming back online, then trigger those buffs again to get the most damage as possible. And so with this new build, I was also able to finish challenge tier 15 expedition solo, but with the changes to get gold on Chem Plant, which in my opinion was a horrible idea because you get nerfs to activities and characters, I only got silver, which actually was a better time than my previous build, so I really hope that they reverse these expedition changes. I'd say this build is a little bit better than average, and so if this build got silver, I can't imagine an average build doing much better than this, making solo gold very hard to do for the casual player. If you want me to talk more about this, let me know in the comments section down below, and I might make a video out of it. But with that, I hope you guys enjoyed my Trickster build, and as always, thank you guys for watching. Hope to catch you in the next one, and GG.